day we have one in Ragsdale. Amanda Bearse. And Stephen Jeffries. For the next 55 minutes, if you address Ms. Bearse, you have to refer to her as Nancy.
But it's Bearse.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
It's okay. Rhymes with purse. Have we turned that on? What's the button?
Fine.
I'm so sorry about being a smartass there. I didn't even mean to.
It's okay, rhymes with hearse.
Okay, Amanda Bearse. So sorry. So I have at least a couple of questions. Christina Lackey is doing our American Sign Language now. I'm doing our interpretation. Give her a shout out. She's been working hard all day. It's really taxing. And William or Will? What do you prefer? This is my fourth panel. Just don't do it. Then I've been drinking bourbon all day. She wanted to know what it was like to be in Gremlins.
Christina is so funny. She's so funny. There was a story behind that, though. I did a con in New Jersey, and I sat next to Zach Galligan. We were in tables right next to each other, and a woman came up and was asking me about Gremlins and what it was like to be in Gremlins and how I did it and how to act with those things. And I said, I don't know. Why don't you ask the guy at the next table?
And she wanted to know about the mustache as well. Is that for a role?
No, I didn't have it.
I'm talking about now.
Oh, she wants to know about it? Or I thought you,
You're gonna believe the pretty girl or the fat guy next to you?
well, that's an easy choice.
Bad guy.
It's for a porn I'm doing, thank you.
Fantastic.
Not supposed to say anything yet.
I can't think of an F word we could put in front of night that would be a good porn title. I'll have to think about it for a while. There's some kids in here, so I'll edit it.
Yes.
Amanda, Steve. So I was reading that those contacts were terrible.
Is that my cue?
Yeah.
Yes, this is a story I've told before. Because we were guinea pigs back in the day when there was no CGI and they were always trying to outdo each other in terms of special effects makeup, and Fright Night was no exception. It was actually quite an awesome film in that way in terms of Richard Edlund and all the work his group did. But I had 3 separate sets of contacts to wear as I became more vampiric. And I don't wear lenses. I didn't then, I don't now, and so it was kind of alien to be in my eyes anyway, and they were the glass kind. And they had to paint them and then sand them before they went into my eyes. Well, I'd worn at least one set, and then they put them in, and I didn't have to wear them very long, but as soon as this pair went in, I was like, this hurts. This really hurts. And but I didn't want to really squeak the wheel because it's time is money, and you just want to be the team player and keep going. But it was getting weird, so I finally did, raise my hand and say, I think there's something going on. And they had forgotten to sand the lenses, so I filed a suit. No, they took them out. And gave me a minute, gave me some eye drops, and all is well. But yeah, I give Steve Johnson a hard time about that. Never let him forget it.
Stephen, real quick, I had a lady in the audience who asked me a question because we were talking about the fangs. How many times did you cut your lips on those when they were sticking out? Was it?
Well, no. I mean, they were made by a real orthodontist. Like as if they were dentures, I guess, and they snapped right in, and I came close a couple of times, but they hung pretty much away from my lower lip, and they were great. I mean, they were no problem. The contacts were horrendous. I mean, they, I think what Amanda alluded to, the special effects guys, they came to me with them, like kind of salivating, like, oh, these are so cool. And I'm like, you gotta be kidding, those aren't gonna go in my eye. And, I remember I actually did wear hard contacts when I was a kid. And those are sort of uncomfortable, but not that bad. But these things were just inhumane. I mean, it was. I mean,
You didn't see it.
Yeah. I think you and Chris wore them even longer than me as far as screen time, and it. I mean, they were painful, and I think a week later they invented the soft ones that a lot of you guys. No, seriously, right after they came up with a way to make them, but they do look really kind of special though, you know, and you know, all for the sake of art.
Well, and there was just a real pinhole through them, just barely, to sort of see a little bit. And John Stark, who played Billy Cole, he tells the story of he had his in for his last.
Going up the stairs.
Yes, and had some issues.
He couldn't see.
No,
Yeah, it was blind.
Oh, yes, Jonathan Stark, who plays Billy Cole, when he got shot towards the end of the movie, he has one eye going that way, and he's supposed to have the other guy going that way, I guess. And he was using two contacts, but he couldn't see a thing outside of him, so he kept tripping on the stairs when he would zombie up the stairs. And, so they had to do it like 4 times. They finally said, just take one of them out. So that's why one eye goes that way and the other is straight. So he could see where he was going.
All right, we have a special treat. You guys ready? Tom Holland is on the phone, the director. Do you want to say hi?
Hello.
Can you guys hear him? You want to say hi to all the Scarefest fans?
Hello, everybody out there.
Whoa, hey. So let's go ahead and get started. What questions do we have? Somebody, anybody, questions? Not everybody at once. Slow down. Right there, gentlemen. Yes, sir.
What is your favorite vampiric scene that y'all had to do?
Say again?
Tom, you said, what is the favorite vampiric scene that they had to do in Fright Night?
Do you have a favorite vampiric scene?
Do you have a favorite vampiric?
It is now.
What is your favorite scene in Fright Night?
Mine?
Sure.
Yeah, well, I guess it's Chris Sarandon jumping off the balcony. And because you go to a moving map shot done by Richard Edlund of the bat of Chris turning into a bat, and then you cut to the puppet flying directly towards Roddy McDowell. And it hits Roddy, takes him to the floor, and now you're into the bat, which is a hand puppet, and it tries to bite Roddy, but instead it bites Charlie. And then Charlie rips it off, and the bat flies down the corridor to the basement. And that was a mixture of visual effects, puppetry, great acting by the actors, makeup effects with Chris Sarandon as the vampire at the top. That uses everything.
Tom, is it true that the Roddy broke the bat while they were shooting? You had to finish it later?
That he broke the
Yeah,
bat.
they broke the bat.
Yeah, I read that online. When I was doing research.
No, I don't know. I have the bat here.
Okay.
When the wings are fully extended, it's 5.5 feet. And I had to do a lot of work to restore it and to preserve it. Maybe, that's a question you'd have to ask Randy Cook or Steve Johnson. Because what the bat was is a hand puppet. I can't remember whether it was Steve or Randy had their hand down through the body into the head and were manipulating the mouth to bite Charlie when it tries to bite Roddy. And Roddy puts up the stick and it clamps down on the stick instead. I can't remember the bat being broken. I remember being a very, very complicated sequence that took a lot of work from the actors and the puppeteers. I remember that.
Okay, well, for the rest of our actors, your favorite scene?
Was that yours, Billy?
Because you didn't get to become anything.
Yeah, I didn't really get to join you guys being vampires and stuff, so I don't know that what mine would be. That was a good scene. I remember seeing that in the theater.
Or
for the first time.
interaction with it.
What's that?
Or interaction with the vampire in favorite scene.
I don't know. What do you think? You go ahead.
Okay. Actually, that was my favorite vampire. No, I'm kidding. Because I wasn't in it. I really enjoyed the beginning of Amy's transformation in the dance club. So, which leads to that little room where I get bitten. But that's where I really got to dig a little deeper into the character, grow a little older, grow a few more colors and aspects to the character, which just kept progressing. So that was a hard place to be shooting. That dance club was very challenging, but Chris, it was fun to work that out with him, to be choreographed and do some of those kinds of things.
The most moving transition scene is Stephen from werewolf back into boy, and the biggest shock moment is the reveal on Amy's mouth, sharp mouth.
Absolutely. Steve, you want to talk about that scene? Because you're in the makeup the whole time, correct?
Yeah, that the scene where I transform, when it goes from a wolf to me just laying there on the floor, it was pretty much all special effects. I mean, I was there, and that was me with the puppet on the head. And but my favorite scene was when Chris chases me in the alley, and I'm scared to death, and then he traps me in the corner and takes his cape, and I know that it's like a life-changing moment, and it was real subtle, but it was kind of emotionally difficult to do, but I would say that's my favorite.
Yeah, I guess I would say that the one that I was involved with was the one where I stuck the pencil in his hand in the window, and you actually see him sort of go in reverse back from being the full vampiric thing to back to the next door neighbor, and just the cutting away and back and forth, and how you just sort of see it progress or regress, I guess would be mine.
What next question do we have? Right there. There's one right there, Chad, and then you up next.
Hi. What was it like to work with Roddy? I've always been a big fan of his. Was he friendly on the set? Did you guys have a lot of fun with him?
Do you want to start here and go around? Or do you want to start with Tom? Okay, we'll start with Tom. Tom, did you hear the question?
Yes, I did. Roddy had done a movie that I had written called Class of 1984. And he was wonderful in it. He was moving. He had a scene in it where the juvenile delinquents, he was a biology teacher, and the delinquents had killed all of the animals in his biology class. And he loses it. And he threatens them with a gun, but at the same time he's going to tears. So with Roddy, I knew that Roddy could get the pathos in Peter Vincent. And that gave me confidence to hire him, and he came in, and he said that the image for Peter Vincent was the cowardly lion, which I thought was a wonderful, image on his part. And every one of the actors was absolutely wonderful. We're talking about, Amanda could pull off The Girl Next Door, but she had a comedy. She could make it into a grin. Billy Ragsdale, had this, he still has it, decency as a human being. So he was the boy next door, but he was attractive, but not too attractive, but there was some.
Oh, we lost it.
face leading there's something about Billy that, you know, is the best of America, actually. There's just the decency and the goodness in him. And you know, and Steven's really a brilliant character actor. I saw it again. We were doing a documentary, and you know, we shot part of it here at the house with Steven. And you can see Steven in the stills, you know, having fun with the bat 30 years later. He wore in the transition. And you just look at the photographs, the iPhone photographs, of him having fun with the props 30 years later, and it's funny, it's amusing. There's the ability, Steven has the ability to commit, you know, to make the moment work. It can come out, with him it's spontaneous and comes out naturally. So everybody, the entire cast was wonderful. And Roddy was, I think, continually supporting. Bill Ragsdale, I think, was closer to him than anybody else, so he could probably speak to that. But, you know, Chris Sarandon and Roddy, you know, everybody, because everybody everybody came together in a 2-week rehearsal process, which we rehearsed it like a stage play. And I think it really, really made a lot of difference, because it made us almost into a repertory theater company for 3 months. Everybody knew everybody so well because of the rehearsal process. And they've been able to work out their characters and the lines and find the moments and find the humor. And it was just a wonderful group of actors that was given a chance to rehearse and to reach the point of performance. And I thank you all. You guys next.
There you go, America.
Great answer. Specifically, Roddy was very generous. He was very unassuming. He, you know, you knew you were in the presence of someone who was kind of living history of film, and you know, knew everything, knew where the bodies were buried, knew all the stories, had all the background for every movie you'd ever seen. And in spite of that, he was very welcoming and you know, treated you like a real peer, and like you were his equal. And that was really, after 30 years in the business, at this point, you realize how rare that is. And he was a joy to work with. What's that?
I said, here.
He was absolutely lovely and humble and told great stories. So sometimes you have to stand on your mark on a set while they tweak lights, and sometimes you can be standing there for a while. And I remember the scene that I was in with him and Steven, and he just told this most marvelous story that was true, but yet I've never heard it before or since, about the studio that we were shooting in, which looked like it was called Laird Studios at the time, but it was originally called the Ince Studio. And so there's a very famous story about Mr. Ince and William Randolph Hearst and the big parties that he used to have up at his castle, and about the romance with Marion Davies and Charlie Chaplin, and he just spun this tale, and we're just standing there going, I can't believe I'm hearing this, and I'm hearing this from Roddy McDowell. And yeah, he was a lovely man, truly.
Yeah, it was amazing to me that, you know, he'd been in the industry and in the business for so many years, and, you know, when he was on the set, it was like he was doing it for the first time. You know, he was so not jaded, and it was just, you know, I had no idea what to expect when, you know, before I met him, but like Billy said, he really put you at ease, and it was just such a treat to have worked with him.
Roddy had a very difficult time. He had a difficult time because he'd been a child movie star, and it's extremely difficult for child actors to transition into having an adult career. especially in Roddy's time. I'm having Jackie Cooper and maybe Roddy, and I can't think of very many others that have successfully done it. But Roddy, was like a movie star when he was like 8 years old after How Green Was My Valley. And then he was unemployable when he was 22 or 23. And I think that gave him an appreciation for the struggle that all actors go through. And he remained encouraging, and he carried the oral history of the business in his head. He was a big supporter of the motion picture home, which is where when you're very old, you at least have a place to end up if you're in the business, and you need help at some point. And Roddy went out there for years and visited the last of the silent movie stars. And I wish I could remember their names now, but Miriam Hopkins, I can't bring them out. But Roddy collected the history of the business, especially the silent movie history, which at that moment in time had been pretty much forgotten by Hollywood. I think it's a little bit more remembered now because of Kevin Brunlaw's book on it, The Parade's Gone By, I think it's called, and also because they run silent films, I think, on the TCM, on the movie channel now, on Saturdays and Sundays. But Roddy had a love for actors and creative people that continued even when their careers were over. He remembered what talented creative people in the business had accomplished, and he still appreciated them when Hollywood had forgotten them. And that's a rather sad story, but it goes to speak to his love of the movie business and also his goodness as a human being.
All right, here. Do we have another question? Oh, right here, sir.
What was your reaction when you heard they were remaking it? And if you've seen it, what was your reaction after that?
Same thing.
Tom, did you hear that question?
Yeah, I did. It's not a fair question, actually. But I think everybody involved with the remake did a terrific job. It was an extremely professional movie. The direction, the script, certainly a talented group of actors. I'm obviously prejudiced. It did not catch the spirit of the original. Did not catch. Look, in the original, Charlie is the engine that makes Fright Night go. The heart of it is Peter Vincent. And the big thing that the remake missed was the heart. And it wasn't because of any fault among the actors. The guy who played Doctor Who was a terrific actor. But it was off. I mean, they didn't follow through with Peter Vincent. So it didn't have a heart. It was more like to me, it was more like a typical vampire movie of that moment in time. Let's get a potato head. Let's get a vampire from 30 Days of Night, and let's turn Jerry Dandridge into a killer vampire. So you have the poor Irish actor doesn't have anything to play, and he could have played the hell out of Peter Vincent, out of Jerry Dandridge. So it was a very good movie, but it wasn't Fright Night to me because so much of the emotional values have been changed. For instance, in the remake, the moment that Charlie sees Jerry Dandridge carrying the coffin into the house that opens the movie, that's gone, and that's called the incident that begins the movie, and that's given instead the evil end that happens off screen. So you haven't motivated Charlie in the remake with the same do-or-die motivation that Bill Ragsdale had. It's little things like that. So I thought it was a very good movie, but I didn't think that it captured too much of the spirit of the original, especially the heart.
I agree with a lot of that. I didn't really believe it when they said they were going to remake it. I mean, it had sort of been talked about for a time, and people had asked me about it. But then I saw that it was going to be made, and I think it's Spielberg's company that redid it. So I thought, okay, well, this is great. This is going to be this is going to be really fun for a while. But you know, I just didn't understand it, why they were doing it. I mean, there were plenty of other movies that could probably use a second chance, but I don't think ours was one of them. I think that it was fine the way it was.
I agree, and I never really thought about it that way. I enjoyed it as a standalone film. As I've spoken with many of you in the audience over the weekend, that it doesn't really bear a relationship to the original movie, and exactly what Tom spoke to. It doesn't have the humanity. It's sort of one dark color all the way through. And to me, one of the bright spots was to see Chris Sarandon pop up in that scene, and that was the only funny moment. So it didn't have the humor. It really it didn't have a lot of what the original had and what made it special. I too was a little surprised, but I was kind of like, why would they do that? But and I'm a huge fan of Colin Farrell and Toni Collette. I mean, it's an incredible group of actors there. But this, as I've always said and praised Tom, the Fright Night began on the page, and then it was in his mind all through that process, and he brought that visual to life, and we got to come and play with him. And if it's not on the page, it's not going to be on the screen. And so even though they tried to take these characters, they changed some circumstance and so forth, it wasn't the same script, and it wasn't the same director. And so it really was a very different film.
Yeah, I totally agree, and I think the real heart of the movie was Tom's script. I mean, it was, when I first read it, it was so special, you know, and it was so specific. You know, there were beginnings and middles and ends of various characters, and it made sense, and it was spontaneous, and it was just an incredible script. And I started watching the remake, and it just, you know, I felt like I was being violated. It's like, it was just really weird. You know, it's like, you can't do this. We've already done it. And it really was a strange, uncomfortable feeling that I had. And I watched it for like 20 minutes, and I turned it off.
We have a question over here.
Where you go?
Chad's gonna die.
I know Christopher Lee had a part in the movie and all that, and I know he recently died and all that. I just wanted to know what y'all's feelings about him passing after getting to work with him and all that.
The question about Christopher Lee?
Yeah.
Okay. Working in Fright Night?
Yeah, he's on the list of people who's in the movie.
I was not aware Christopher Lee was in Fright Night.
Yeah,
That's okay. Tom, do you want to talk about Christopher Lee? Was he maybe your original choice?
No, my original choice was Vincent Price.
Okay.
And Vincent Price, I did start to make an offer, and then I was told that his health was failing, and that he couldn't do it. And so that's how I moved on to Roddy. But as I said, Roddy had given a great performance in another movie I had written. Then, to complete the circle, I ended up one night at Roddy's house having dinner, and I was seated at a table with Vincent Price and his wife Coral Brown. nobody was bigger in American horror anyway than Vincent Price. You know, I mean, he was our answer to Christopher Lee. I'm talking about Vincent Price did the AIP horror pictures, and Christopher Lee did the Hammer horror pictures. Anyway, I ended up having dinner with Vincent and his wife. He was just lovely. I mean, very, very sophisticated. And all I wanted to do was talk about his horror movies, and all he wanted to do was talk about cooking and art. I mean, he wrote cookbooks, Vincent Price, and he was an extremely knowledgeable collector of art. In fact, he has there's the Vincent Price Art Museum at a local college here in Los Angeles. And I'm very thankful that Roddy gave me the chance to meet him and his wife, you know, before they passed. And, you know, I sit here now, and I wish I had, there's so many people I've met and know it, and I wish I'd gotten an autograph from every one of them, but I didn't. But leading my list would be Vincent Price. I also ended up having lunch with Christopher Lee probably 10 or 12 years ago. And, you know, I felt the same way about Christopher. Christopher Lee was not warm and friendly and fuzzy like Roddy or like Vincent Price. Christopher Lee was, he was a nice man, but he was, I don't know how you say this, and I don't mean to speak ill of the dead, but Christopher Lee was a ham. And, you know, everything was big, you know, he was on the stage even when you were having lunch with him. Vincent Price was not like that. Vincent Price was a man, a very sophisticated man with a multitude of interests that went beyond just acting in films. And Roddy was the same way. Roddy's interest was really the film business and the history of it. But they were all extraordinary gentlemen. But the one that I had originally wanted and that I wrote it for, Vincent Price and Peter Cushing. I always thought that Peter Cushing was the greater of the actors in the Hammer films. You know, he was always the one along with Christopher Lee. But anyway, that's how Vincent's name came to be. For Peter Cushing and Vincent Price. And God bless them all.
Tom, you're just as big a fanboy as I am.
My art.
Yeah.
Me too.
Well, coincidentally, Vincent's daughter Victoria is here. Some of you may or may not know that. And there was, they just reissued, one of his cookbooks. And so she's here to represent her dad and his legacy. So if you haven't happened by, she's near where we are at the very back of the room, kind of across the way from the American Horror Story people, and she's absolutely lovely.
And Sarah Karloff's here this weekend as well.
More of a general question. On the second movie, why didn't they ever explain about Amanda? Whatever happened to her? Because they leave off in the second movie, he has a new girlfriend, and you never hear about Amanda. And then you also, like at the end of the movie, you think that evil might still be alive. Like, and was there any?
Yeah, I'd like to know too. Yeah, nobody asked me. Actually, I think there was an original draft of a sequel where Amy was in it.
Maybe.
But that didn't.
Well, Tom didn't write the sequel.
Yeah, Tom didn't have anything to do with it.
He's off the hook for all of it.
You know, it just didn't happen for that character, and you know, nobody ever gives you an explanation and all that. But so
until you go see the movie, and it's like, oh, that's right. I don't know why that is. I think that Stephen had moved on to another project, maybe.
Yeah, I read the script, and it was I don't know if the character's name was actually Evil Ed, but it was an Evil Ed-like character, and I would have done it, but Robert Englund called and wanted me to do 976 Evil, and you know that was a pretty easy choice. But it was great.
I think that's just, you know, it's why Bond has a new girlfriend every time. It's why, you know, the Mission Impossible, and Tom Cruise has a new girlfriend every time. I mean, it's just kind of art of the system, you know, where you refresh things. You gotta have.
That doesn't make it right.
It doesn't. Well, you had 2 husbands on Married with Children.
Yeah, I was busy doing another little something at the time too, but I too would have loved to have been a part of it because we really had a great time. But I know also that it would not have been the same experience without Tom and his script, his direction, and Roddy, and Stephen, and Chris, so good luck with that, Billy.
Tom, do you have anything to say about Fright Night Part 2? Yeah, you did.
Yeah, Tommy Lee Wallace is a friend. I think he's terrific. You know, I mean, you know, so many people are gone. You want to be as kind as you can. But I mean, a lot of that. The producer of Fright Night, Herb Jaffe, used the success of the movie to launch his own company, Vista Productions. And so I think that Fright Night 2 was the launching picture. And Herb had a slight problem, which is quite often he couldn't get his hand out of his pocket. So, you know, so Tommy was very limited as to what he could do and what he couldn't do. That was in the time when sequels were thought of as a way to make a quick buck with 1 or 2 weekends, and that was it. Now it's reversed. In the sequels, they pour more money into the sequels than they do into the originals. And they can quite often make more money. But I think a lot of what happened to Fright Night 2 from Vista were money issues.
Do you want to talk about Tommy Wallace? He's from Kentucky. That's the reason I mentioned. He's a really sweet guy.
He's from Bowling Green.
Yeah, absolutely. Him and Carpenter.
Yeah. Tommy Lee was great. He was he had a lot on his plate, I think, that when he was doing the film, and he was very focused on the technical aspect of it. Like with Tom Holland, he mentioned that we had a rehearsal period and all that stuff, so we really got into the characters and really got, you know, knee deep in that stuff. And for Fright Night 2, we just sort of, you know, for Roddy and I, we just, you know, he sort of said, you know what to do, and then kind of went about the technical aspect of making the movie. And that was fine, and we were fine. I just sort of missed that in the experience, is all.
Okay, another question?
First off, I just want to thank you for coming. You guys are a draw for, you know, our small little town of central Kentucky here.
You're welcome. It's been a pleasure. It really has. It's lovely to be here with you guys.
Well, I hope there's hospitality and friendliness, but I also want to recognize that it's 30 years since the movie, and we're still talking about it, but these are your careers. So has the movie caused any regrets, any typecasting, because you're still having to talk about it 30 years later, or do you still enjoy talking about it, rehash it?
It was great for me. I mean, it was like my first thing practically, so it was great, and it's phenomenal that we're still talking about it 30 years later. And as I sort of joked to some of the people who came by and asked about the remake, I said, well, you know, they're not here. Those, you know, we're here. So it's very gratifying. It's very gratifying. And we go to these things and do these conventions, and there are children, you know? I mean, there's 5-year-olds, 4-year-olds who know the movie and love the movie, and that I never would have, you know, who could have predicted that? No way. So it's very gratifying, and it's great to see the joy, the genuine joy that people have when they come up and talk about the movies and all that stuff. So I have no regrets at all.
Oh, absolutely none. And the three of us were really at the beginning of our careers. I had no idea the impact that it would have on my life personally. And it's just a real joyful experience to be able to gather together with these two guys, with Tom on occasion, and Tom through Skype, and Chris, and Jonathan Stark as well. And it's not anything we would have thought would happen, but it's an amazing journey. And so thank you for being here, because without you, we wouldn't be. And we appreciate how much you love the film. And I think it holds a place in my heart. And I think I can speak for everybody that we all we treasure the experience. I didn't know how remarkable it was. I was too early in my career, looking back, to have that 2-week rehearsal period and to have the relationships that came out of that. I think it's evident on the screen. We had a connection during the making of the film. And I think that kind of energy does come off the screen. But who knew? Who knew?
Yeah, a lot of times, when you make a movie or do a play or something, you do the last performance, or you wrap, and you never see the cast again, and you just, I never really expected that something like this would be happening, but I'm not surprised, because from the first read of the script, I knew it was really, really good. So, it's, and it's wonderful that you guys are here, and that it still has legs. It's great. It's fabulous.
Okay, we've got.
Hello.
Go ahead.
Adding to what Stephen said earlier about the Fright Night script, and how awesome that it is. One of my favorite scenes is the opening scene between Charlie and Amy, and he gets frustrated and he says, all he ever hears is Charlie, stop it. And it's how you say it and the delivery, it cracks me up every single time.
I'm sorry, I got distracted.
Okay.
Yeah, I didn't hear it.
Let's just do that question one more time.
One of my favorite scenes in the movie is in the beginning, opening scene, opening between Charlie and Amy. And he gets frustrated and he says all he ever hears is Charlie, stop it. It cracks me up every time. It's the delivery, it's how you say it. And I wanted to know, during filming, maybe even that scene, were there any times where you guys just cracked up, while
We
filming?
laughed a lot. I wouldn't be surprised if it wasn't in that scene too. I have to say he's a really good kisser. So, even though he's not that handsome, they try harder. You know what I mean?
Very patriotic.
But yes.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, I mean, we had a really good time together, hanging out. I mentioned to somebody in the signing today that there was, I think, one day, maybe 2 days, maybe Tom remembers, that we were all actually in the same room together. And it was the scene where they bring in Peter with me into the house to, prove that he's not a vampire and drinks the holy water and all that stuff. And that day I remember well, because we all kind of knew each other individually or in small groups, but that day we were all together, and it was like a party, and they would stop the party to film the scene, and then we would get back to it. It was a very warm, great feeling. The biggest laugh I remember having was at the end when we have gone down to the basement and we've broken the window, or no, before we break the windows, we've sort of cornered Jerry, and Peter's opened up the coffin, and he's sprung up, and and he's in a fighting mood, obviously. There's a point where Peter tries to kind of get away or make his escape, and then Jerry jumps over the casket, and lands in front of him, and kind of all the sound stops, and he just kind of does this, little evil chuckle thing. In one of the takes, Chris didn't make it over the casket, and he actually sort of straddled it like one of those mechanical bulls, and landed like that. And that was pretty funny. I laughed at that.
Anything to add to that, Tom or Stephen?
Stephen,
No, but there are we just had it was a terrific time making it. I mean, at the time, since it was my first directorial effort, it never occurred to me that it wasn't going to be like that forever, but it never was again. And it was the chemistry. Look, you need a little bit of luck to make any show really, really good. And somehow Fright Night caught lightning in a bottle. Everybody, there was just chemistry between everybody. And that goes to the crew too, and especially the DP and Richard Udlin and his whole effects group. But it was an amazing experience. That was the top effects group in Hollywood at the moment. I inherited the entire Ghostbusters crew, is what made the movie so good. This small little movie had a crew that was coming off one of the biggest Hollywood productions. And that's one reason why it's so polished. But none of that explains why the actors had the magic that they had together. And there were ups and downs and a few spats along the way. But the closest example I can think of was like a repertory company. And that was like a people that had been together a long time, working together, that were working towards the common goal of doing the best movie they could, and at the same time we're having a lot of fun. And I still think it was the bonding experience of the rehearsal period.
Okay, cool. Do we have any other questions? Right up here, Jen. Hold on for 1 second, so everybody can hear you.
I'm loud enough without it. In the scene where Peter Benson is showing you the props from the film and reminiscing on it, is there anything from the film, any props, any memorabilia, any pieces that you still have that are important to you or personal to you from the film?
Don't we wish?
Say it for me one more time, Tom.
I said, don't we wish we had some of the props? That room, Peter Vincent's room, was really rented for the occasion from Florey Ackerman. And I'll let somebody, maybe you can tell them who Florey Ackerman was. He created the first monster magazine.
Famous Monsters of Filmland.
Yeah, he was the greatest. He was the first collector of movie props. And he had this huge old Spanish house, and every floor in it was crammed with props from the 50s, even the 40s, from horror movies and sci-fi movies. And nobody wanted them at the time, because all the movies were considered, junk. Robbie the Robot. I mean, it's an endless list. Anyway, almost everything in Peter Vincent's apartment was on loan from Florey Ackerman's prop collection of the best of the horror sci-fi movies of the 50s, 60s.
For some of you who are not familiar, look up the Acker Mansion. Am I saying that right, Tommy? People actually called it the Acker Mansion. And Uncle Florey, and it's a really special time. If you want to talk about props that you stole?
Love to. I don't think I'd stolen any props. I think I got the jacket. That's what I got. But Amanda had a pretty nice set of props.
Yes, at one point I had to show up at a warehouse somewhere out in the middle of nowhere at about 4:30 in the morning and have 4 guys, precious geeky guys, slap plaster on my breasts in order to mold a more voluptuous set of curves for me to wear under the white gown, because that was part of the transition. And I kept those breasts. I don't know. And I never brought them out. I guess. I kept them in a See's candy box for years and through several moves. And then when we got together for the first time, I think it was around the 25th anniversary, when I saw all these fellas again, I still had the breasts. And at one event, I just brought them out and sort of auctioned them off. Just because it was like, why am I holding on to these? I'm sorry, Tom, I could have left you with my breasts, but I wish I had held on to my fangs, because I had 3 sets. I didn't care for the contact lenses, but I had 3 sets of fangs. And the first pair, the baby pair, were so cool. They were just barely there. And I wish I could hang out in those from time to time.
Amanda, I read that you encouraged people to touch those breasts.
Sure. Why not? And it, like I said, it was a cold morning, which served the process, which then was enhanced by resin. And it's evident in a couple of the shots that I have on my table. They're there in all their glory. Yeah.
Steve?
No comment.
Check on eBay. Steven's got something really expensive to sell. Tom, did you have something to say? I'm sorry.
Yeah, I wish that I kept the cigarette case.
Yeah.
That Roddy had held up with the mirror in it. You know, and then he sees that Jerry Dandridge isn't in the reflection. And he drops it and it cracks. And that's what I wish I kept. What I do have is I have all the props except for the skull. Jonathan Stark's Billy Cole's skull at the end of the movie. Jonathan Stark ended up walking off with that, and he keeps saying he's going to give it to me, but it's lost somewhere in the garage. I didn't find it for 10 years.
Great. What's our next question?
Huge fan since since the movie first came out. A lot of my questions have already been answered tonight, but the line from the first movie, "You're so cool, Brewster," was it originally in on the script? This for Mr. Jeffries, or was it or did you just come up with it, or was it originally in the script?
No. It was, Tom.
You're so cool, Bruce.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah. But no, when I first read the script, I really thought that I was going to play Billy's part, because I didn't really see myself at all as Evil Ed, at all. I mean, I didn't see any similarities, really. And when I was reading it, I did see the obnoxious nature of this guy, and I'm like really sensitive, and it was like even worse then. But I want to play a character that's really people like, and is pop. But and when I read and when it came time to do that line, and even the laugh.
It's very iconic. It's like comic book style,
It was the most difficult and uncomfortable part of doing the movie. But it turns out that it. And Tom just encouraged me and said, this is really important. We gotta, really nail this. And, and with his encouragement, it turned out, really good, I guess.
I think we have time for maybe about one more question. Who's got a really good question to end on? Right over here, we've got a couple.
I was going to say one thing in terms of memorabilia and history and all that stuff. There's a great Fright Night mystery that if any of you are able to participate in and try and solve. While we were shooting the movie, for the entire movie, Roddy, who was a big photographer, was walking around with a video camera, and he shot everything from backstage, from the behind the scenes for months. And it's when video cameras were pretty big, and you had to have the case on your side to record it on and everything. And so it's hours and hours of video footage of us making the movie, and nobody knows where it is. It's kind of just disappeared. And Roddy's gone and won't tell. So there were rumors that it ended up in some college somewhere, but that hasn't panned out. So if anybody likes doing sleuthing of that nature, we would all love to, the world would love to find something of it.
We also kept Peter Vincent's vampire kit. And I know he had it, and that disappeared too.
Ironic.
All right, our last question.
Hi guys. My question for you is, being that you made this movie when you guys were teenagers, is there any part of yourself that you put into your character, or any part of your character that you really empathized with, being that, you know, you were pretty much at that walk of life? I think I was 22 in the movie, but I was at severe arrested development, so I was about 15 or 14 mentally. And yeah, I mean, any guy who's been a teenager knows what that's like, you know, to feel like you're alone and you're the only one who knows what you're going through, and, you know, and nobody else seems to care and all that stuff. So very much so, you know, I think that's an archetypal sort of teenage experience, probably for boys and girls.
I was 26, and I remember the early auditions sitting next to 16 and 17-year-old girls and looking at them down the road, yes, Tom, going, I don't buy this. But because of the nature of the character and the wonderful arc that she went through, there was a little more life experience to tap into. And I was able to play young enough. And, you know, obviously, Billy and I, opposite one another, you bought that relationship, and Stephen too, because how old were you?
24.
Okay, so we were all about the same age. But so there was a complimentary thing going on, but then it was really lovely to be able to sort of grow into that character a little deeper. And you bring a lot of your own, you bring all of who you are to a character. But it's how you channel it, and it's the choices that you make, and again, being able to work off such fine actors, such as, well, William and Stephen, and Chris Sarandon and Roddy. When you're working opposite this kind of talent, you just hang on and go for the ride. And it was really enjoyable, I think, for all of us. And we're glad to be able to still be here talking about it, because we're old now.
Yeah, and I have to give a nod to Jackie Birch, who had played a big part in all of this by picking the right people, you know, and she's one of these casting directors that really goes beyond, you know, what's required of her. You know, she just, you know, it's amazing how she sensed, you know, each one of us for the characters, and you know, we fit the characters like gloves.
All right, before we're over, Tom, is there anything you want to say before we let you go?
No, but it really is a miracle that 30 years later, this has become, Fright Night's become multi-generational. And I want to thank the actors, and I want to thank the audience out there that has kept this movie alive and passed it on to their friends and their kids and their relatives and everybody. And I'm just very thankful. And thank you all.
And we're thankful for you, Tom, because without you, there would be no Fright Night.
God bless you.
All right. Scarefest, I want to thank Tom Holland, Will, Erica, Stephen, thank you so much.